Hey, what's up, guys? Clayton Gits here. I am super honored, excited to be joined by Pritesh Damani this afternoon. And Pritesh is the Chief Technology Officer of Real Brokerage. And just very grateful that he was able to carve out some time to talk to us today. And we've got a bunch of questions to just try to get to the bottom of what is going on with Real Brokerage, and more specifically, the technology that Pritesh and his team are responsible for. So Pritesh, welcome. Thank you so much for, as I said, carving out some time.
It's my pleasure. Should be fun.
So Pritesh, can you, if we can just kick it off, I'd love for people, and I don't know the answer to this as well. We haven't had the time really to spend getting to know each other. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, your family, and I'd love to find out also, like, what do you do when you're actually not working?
The last question is the hardest. No, I was born and brought up in India, Mumbai. I came to United States for my grad school in 2002, August. And after grad school, I worked for a startup for 6 years. And in fact, maybe that's probably the best thing that happened to me, is because I learned a lot in like a short amount of like time span. And we had this mentality of you cannot outdo me. And there were a couple of guys at work, and we were just like, we would show up at like 10 a.m. and nobody wanted to leave until like 11 p.m. the same day. And like everybody was just like, you're not gonna outdo me. And I was never the smartest kid in school. But at some point I realized that I could get to a mindset where, the one thing that was in my control was I could work hard and nobody could stop. Sometimes like smartness, brilliance comes from genetics, maybe nurture, your social environment. But what you control is just how hard you can work. So at one point in my life, I decided like, I'm just going to go nuts. Like, 'cause this is the one thing I can control. And then things just, kind of started working for me. So the startup was like an incredible experience. After that, I decided, okay, I want to do my own companies. So I did my first company, which was born out of passion for like, just keeping score in sports. And it was like a social network for high school athletics. So we had 1,800 or 2,000 schools in the country. And I would like, my accent has changed over the years, but like this is 2002, and I would call like football coaches in Texas. And and I would tell them, hey, do you want to buy a website to manage a football team? And I'm sure most of them were like, dude, do you know what football is? But like I had like researched every sport, every statistic, and and done enough research on like specifically football in the United States. Like, one of my favorite shows was like Friday Night Lights, and like that kind of like gave me like a good insight. Booster Club research. So much went into it. And then we had good amount of schools using it. The total size of the business was never going to be big enough. So after that, I did another company, which was kind of like a failure in many ways. It was a good idea, but not a good business. It was called Fantasy Buzzer, and the idea was that it was AI for fantasy football.
Hmm.
And I was playing like 3 or 4 leagues every year, and I was just spending too much time keeping up with research and stuff like that. So this was like real-time feed. If Marshawn Lynch was injured or something, it would tell you, go pick up this guy in your league.
Hmm.
But it was smart enough to know that Marshawn Lynch is also called beast mode. So like if there's a tweet about beast mode, like it would know that they're talking about Marshawn Lynch, right? So, and it was smart enough to do that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
That was exciting. After that, we did another company called GoWatchIt, which was, it's now since acquired by National Cinemedia, and a couple other companies kind of bought portions of the IP. But you could, if you ever want to watch where you can watch a movie, like with all these OTT, sources, GoWatchIt was the company that did that. So
Hmm.
you could go to GoWatchIt.com and find a movie, and it would say you can watch this movie on Netflix on here, on here, on here, on here.
Okay.
And all that data was syndicated by nearly every entertainment website. So every time you saw those little tiles, that was probably GoWatchIt powering it. If you go to RogerEbert.com, it was GoWatchIt powering it.
Hmm.
And it was essentially an ad network, right? So we had billions and billions of pixels being fired on a daily basis. and we would be able to like create personas. Oh, the person who watched Fast and Furious 2 is most likely going to watch Fast and Furious 3. So when that came out, we would be able to retarget those people. Um, that sold to National Cinema Media. After that, and during these times, I was buying real estate, and I was talking to a lot of agents. After that, I started Realty Crunch, which was, in a nutshell, Pinterest and Slack, or Pinterest and Trello, if you've used these tools, put together, but for real estate. So a buyer's family can create a Pinterest-like board of properties from all over the internet, and then you can add your wife, your husband, whoever, mother-in-law, and then you can like, they can all see like the properties are getting added, and you can collaborate. I like this property. I don't like this property. Your agent is on it too. So everybody's kind of on the same page, but it solves the problem of the agent just texting you links, or the buyer just texting links to the agent, right? It's like all text messages, and nobody keeps notes, and like it's just a mess. So we had that product, and Tamir and I had, the same board of advisors on our companies. So that's where that marriage made sense. So then Real ended up buying Realty Crunch in January of 2021. So I came on board, and I have like this skill set of like, it's just not tech, right? Like, if you do startups, you end up raising capital, you end up making models, you kind of understand finances. So very early on, like, this is when I think we had like 1,000 agents, and honestly, like half of them were probably doing any kind of real business. Real was extremely small. And we internally talked about it, and we knew our margins and our mechanics around, how much margin is left after you do a $12,000 cap. And we were seeing pain on a daily basis from just being able to keep up, because the model had just launched and we were seeing some growth, but our teams were not able to keep up. And like the first 21 days was, I was supposed to build a consumer app. So I came in, and and Tamir is like, go build a consumer app. But in the first 21 days, I'd like quickly realized that it was, consumer app is like the least of our problems. Like if we don't like actually build something that scales, the company will not survive, at least in my opinion. So I talked to Tamir, and I was like, hey, I think we need to build something, and we need to automate all of this stuff, or else we're not going to survive this. That's my opinion. And Tamir and I have a good relationship. Back then we knew, each other, but not the way we know each other now. However, he's, also one of the few people I think who has the ability to delegate and trust. There's like some kind of relationship building there, but like he does that. So we still have that, right? And he's like, okay, go build it. How long do you need? And I totally undershot it, like, because if I told them I need a year and a half, they would like, nobody would let me do it. So I still have those emails, and I said like, oh, I need 6 months to rebuild all of this, like, which by the way meant to rebuild, like build all of SkySlope, build all of commenting and task management, and accounting systems inside, right? Like, so there are many accounting tools that you use to integrate with third-party payment providers and stuff like that, all of that, and automate like the transaction process, like automatically generating CDAs or commission calculations, all of that stuff. There was nobody that ever thought about the business this way. Like nobody, like, I don't know if any brokerage like says, okay, start a transaction and validate your commissions, right?
Why
So,
not? Why not, Pritesh? I don't mean to interrupt you, but why do you think no one had ever thought about it that way?
I don't know. I was an outsider, right? So that's the advantage I have. So the very first thing when I said we got to automate this brokerage, we had people in our team who were completely supportive, and we had people in our team like saying, "Are you crazy? Like it can't be automated."
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like, that's the advantage of the outsider. The outsider has an advantage of like not knowing what's failed, like how many people tried, like how many people trade. Later on in the years, I realized that people have apparently spent millions of dollars and tried this over and over again, and like didn't get it right. And I have my own theories on why that didn't work, or why those companies didn't succeed, but that's maybe a different conversation. But at that point, we knew little. The only thing I knew is like, it's a business process. We should be able to automate it. It's not a big deal. If we have to generate 1,000 PDFs, then we'll generate 1,000 PDFs. If you have to read PDFs, we're going to read PDFs. Like whatever it is, like we should be able to automate it. And we got there, right? Like, I mean, right now we're closing, I think $700, $800 deals a day with 9 people on the staff. I mean, you
That's
know,
that's
it's
all
crazy to
that's all technology. I mean, that's not possible without what you and your team have built.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been an interesting close to 3.5 years. But the first year was super hard. Then we launched Canada without being ready, honestly. But like the business needs to do what business needs to do. And when you growth, you grab onto it. You don't wait for like the right time. So we did that fully aware that we were not ready. And we somehow, survived that. The company's grown, 20x, close to 20x now, which is a little crazy. Revenues have gone nuts. But we're still building. I think we've kind of gotten to a point where the brokerage is mature. We have, the core platform, we have the financial automation, we have real signature, and a lot more other things like, products versus features. There's another conversation, right? So there's a lot that happened.
So, I had so many questions were kind of popping up in my head as you were talking. How big is your team today?
Close to 100 people globally.
100?
100.
And so I'm curious because
people, right? Like most of the work that happened in 2021 and early 22 was a fraction of this team, right? Like I coded for 95% of my time, and we were doing 18, 19-hour days. It was pretty standard.
So how have you been able to? There's another company out there that spent $900 million on their technology, which is and this is a company that raised about $2 billion, and so that's almost 50% of what they raised they spent on technology. How has your team? I'm assuming we didn't spend $900 million on our technology, correct?
Not close.
Yeah. So how?
Yeah, not even close.
Right. So how were you able to keep the costs manageable when other companies? That's not the only company. I mean, you can look at other companies out there in the real estate space that have spent a fortune trying to put their tech stack together. How have you and your team been able to do it at a lower cost?
Well, it's a tricky question, right? Like you can't spend the money you don't have. First of all, we didn't have $900 million or whatever, However, I'll give you an example. WhatsApp, if you know WhatsApp, the messaging tool, Facebook bought it for $16 billion, I think. And that was like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. And today it would be way 10x that price probably. How many engineers do you think WhatsApp had?
Well, since you asked the question, probably not a lot. 10?
16.
Yeah.
Total. And I think it's 16 total employees, which are most of them were like engineers, right? Well, the reason I use this example is because it adds a little bit more credibility, probably, right? You don't need a lot of people to build good technology. Most good technology built by a few people. And the reason is because most of the time spent in big teams is around communication or around presentations or around convincing other people why you should be doing something. And more people equals to more drama, equals to more process, more conversations, more checks and balances. So the productivity curve isn't linear. Like, the amount of productive, like if you could measure productivity, what you can get out of 5 people is not, and if you have 50 people, it's not 10x. It actually drops, right? Because now people are talking to each other, like, people's feelings are getting hurt, whatever, like there's drama. Versus the initial 5 people just have like this one mission, and they're all like motivated, and they have like this strong cohesion. So that's one. So early on we had that. Early on, we had a small set of people and we're just going at it. The advantage I also had was, we had a company that was in the United States where we hired a lot of people offshore as well, which was cheaper labor, typical startup stuff. But like, again, the mentality of offshore has changed quite a bit over the years, right? If you see like offshore is no longer like call centers. Like offshore is like super talented people going to super talented schools who can speak amazing English, and you wouldn't know if you met with a teammate of mine, you wouldn't know where they're sitting. Especially in this COVID world where everybody's remote in the United States and outside, like offshore means very little. It's all about talent, right? And talent is available globally. So we were able to tap into that as well, right? So and given the fact that we were already remote, it was very easy for us to build a remote team, which also is an advantage because you go to the talent doesn't have to come to you. But my short answer would be like, you don't need that much money to build what we've built. You just need to know that what you want to build. Like, I think that's a real answer. So we have not tried to build a CRM, right? For example. And there's a very good reason for this, is because we don't feel that, agents will use 100% of the agents will use the CRM we build. Even if we built the greatest CRM in the world, which I doubt, right? Is because of just how the industry works.
Yeah.
No matter how big our brokerage is and no matter how much we believe in our brokerage, agents will feel like, what happens if I leave? Right? And CRM is just that tool where you feel like, okay, I'm not going to start using a CRM so that when I leave, all my data is there. That's one mindset. So there are some agents who believe like, oh, what happens if they steal my data? I mean, honestly, this data is available everywhere. But there are people who are worried about this kind of stuff. And then that's the reason you never get adoption on these tools. So what's the point of building this tool if you're not going to get adoption on it? And we defined our problems really well, right? Like very early on, we defined our problem. What's our problem? Okay, our problem is we will be out of business if we don't manage our efficiency. Right. So every little decision was made around, does this save our bottom line? Does this increase efficiency? And even today, we obsess about it. We obsess about every little detail, every little efficiency. And now we have AI. So internally, AI is also tuned towards making things efficient. And the way to make things efficient is to have humans do better things and let machines do machine things. So the relationship management cannot be done by machines. Relationship management is a human thing, at least at the moment. But machines can answer basic questions or even complex questions. So with AI, we can do that, right? So now we're really dialing it in on that aspect of stuff. So as the agents grow from like agent count has gone 20x, our team hasn't gone 20x, our team has stayed the same count. Right. So and nearly the same people, by the way, too. It's pretty crazy to have that retention as well. So
Yeah. So a couple of kind of specifics about the technology. Where is Real Signature? Where do you see that going ultimately?
So Real Signature was like a difficult decision internally. Like, why do we need to build another signature platform? Like, there's DocuSign. You can get DocuSign for $4 a user or $5 a user. Like, why do we need to build it? So Real's mission is to have a real estate experience, right? It's a real estate experience company. So how do you get a perfect experience if you're just like shoving people from one tool to another and bouncing links around? Like, oh, you want to sign a document, you go to DocuSign.com. You want to like do a transaction, you go to SkySlope. You want to do some commenting and chatting, you stay in your iMessage. That's not an experience. That's just a bunch of plumbing with a bunch of tools, right? So that was one thought process. And the other one was like a real signature is used internally like crazy. Forget about agents using it. When you sign our ICA, you're using real signature. When you're signing all the agreements inside of our tool, you're using real signature. So, it took us a little bit of investment to build it, but it's a strategic piece for us over the longer term. so that we can build an experience that's so embedded and so well done, it truly understands the document instead of like saying it's loading up a PDF. So we do processing a little differently on real signature. So that's one answer. The second one was we don't know, no matter how you slice and dice it, you don't pay real if you don't do business. So I like to think about it as a no fee brokerage, where if you don't make money, we don't make money. That is, in my mind, a no fee brokerage. We don't charge you monthly fees. We don't charge you any ongoing fees or technology fees and all that stuff. The reason is because we built our ongoing cost to like do this to give this away is cents, maybe less per user, right? So it doesn't cost us to onboard new users. If you add 1,000 agents today, our company will probably not even blink an eye. Like it could be done in overnight if I have to do it, right? It will cost us nothing. So that's another thing, right? So the obsession to build technology in-house is another, there's another reason around efficiency of like doing everything. So if we have our own tools, even a little signature tool where someone doesn't have to go to DocuSign anymore, or someone doesn't have to go to some other third-party tool, create a document, hit send, and send it over to like somebody else, just like sign, that saves us like minutes and minutes. Even if it saves us one person in the onboarding team, say 10 minutes a day, multiplied by 10 people, that's 100 minutes a day, multiplied by, I don't know, 200 working days. Like that has value, right? Not just monetary value, their happiness value as well. They're doing better things, right?
Do you see a time where AI will write the contracts for us?
Yes. Mm-hmm. We'll probably be the first company who will help you do that.
How far down the road?
It's like contracts. AI will review contracts as well, and probably spot mistakes faster than anybody else. All of that is very realistic.
Why, just to go back to onboarding for a minute, because one of the things that we noticed when we made the transition was how seamless onboarding was. You didn't onboard our 40 agents in days. You onboarded our 40 agents in minutes. And so how did you achieve that? It's obviously technology, but is there anything specific that your team did to create that efficiency?
Well, there is a tremendous partnership, right? Like, our ops team, Jenna, our CEO, runs all of those ops things. It's not just magical technology that's doing a bunch of stuff. Yeah, we have an onboarding process. Most of it is super streamlined because we home grew it, so you're not like filling up of Google form and someone is then reading it from an Excel sheet and doing something. We've onboarded, like we've home grew the whole thing, so you have like an experience. Like you go through, you fill up your name, your license numbers. We understand these little concepts. The only thing that's manual in the onboarding process is, of course, the transferring of the licenses, whether you do it or we do it, registering with the MLSs, boards, and whatever, verification of that. So we haven't automated that piece yet, where we still verify that you've done your transfers and stuff like that, right? So that piece, the onboarding team takes care of. And we haven't gotten to a point where we can, the onboarding team does a lot more than post. So there's a concept of onboarding, which is like, hey, just get the agents on the platform, transfer the license there on the platform. And after that is like, what is real? Like, how do you use the platform? How do you use the tools and stuff like that? I think that's something that we will continue to iterate on and continue to get to a point where it's more self-driven, but that's also something that we pay attention to. However, I will say that our onboarding team has their own processes and scale and internal automations that they do, which is beyond the tech that we write, right? That also helps in this whole thing.
Yeah. All right. So, so your team does not have a model that they're working on, off of, because it sounds like there's a lot of firsts happening here. So I guess because you're, quote unquote outsider. How is that, if there's no model, or is there a model? But if there is no model, what does that look like? I mean, what is the process that your team goes through is it trial and error? How are you mapping this stuff out? Is it all user experience? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. So just to make sure I understand the word model, you mean like an existing example in the industry that we can like look at and like,
or another industry,
or other industries. Yeah. So we'll go to the other industries in a second on a different topic. But we very early on, this is 3 years ago or something, when we hired people, like Tamir would obsess about don't hire from the real estate industry, right? And we agreed on most of the people were outside of the real estate industry. In some cases, we did end up hiring people from the real estate industry because we don't want to teach them what a listing is. However, we hired a lot of people from outside the real estate industry. And it's a dangerous proposition because you can make so many mistakes along the way. I think the advantage that we had was that I personally have read contracts in 20 states and like executed deals in 20 states. So I kind of like know how the process works and all the nuances of the process, or like the title process and the nuances of a title or an easement or whatever it is, like tiny little things that most tech people don't know. Like I ended up either researching, knowing, or finding out later. But if you looked at an existing platform, it would be no different than the people in our team who were saying it cannot be automated because you would be heavily influenced by what's out there. But we had our core set of beliefs that we wanted to go after, which was, okay, we're going to go after efficiency, we're going to automate the process, and we're going to, it's okay to do it our way. And it's possible we get it wrong. If we get it wrong, then we're screwed, but we're screwed anyways.
Right.
Like if you really deal through our numbers, it's very difficult. This business is difficult, right? So we knew that we had to automate it. We knew nobody else had done it. Sure, can we build a better, a Refshare calculator? Yeah, but it doesn't change the economics. Maybe it increases accelerates attraction by 1%. Maybe. People who are going to join are going to join. People who are going to attract are going to attract. No matter how many calculators we build, like they're going to have their own little, oh, can I have that? Right? Can I have that one other feature? And until you build that one other feature, we're not going to use it. And every time we hear that internally, oh, you build that one thing and then we'll use it, we know not to focus on it at all. Because that means that there will be another thing that we got to build after they use it, right? So, yeah, there's no model per se, but we knew what we wanted to do, and some things were obvious. Like if you talk about other industries, like the concept of like, hey, calculate my commission and asking me, does this look right? Like that's an obvious thing. Like I don't know why people didn't do it. Like I don't know why nobody's like, hey, let's just like do the basic math. Or like I don't know why people have Excel sheets. Like I don't get it. But for us, it was obvious. Like let's just ask the agent if the commissions look right, because they're the ones who are doing the deal. It's not like that complicated. It just says your gross commission, how much do you pay real, are you contributing to stock or not, and this is the bottom line number. They say yes, and then we know the tax laws. We know all the which county. If you're in LA County, we know what your local taxation is. Like we'll add all of that stuff, and oftentimes the realtor doesn't know. Right, so they're relying on us to do that math correctly. They are relying on us to withhold the taxes correctly and pay the county or pay the province or the state or whatever. And then if you know the math and putting it on a piece of paper, call it a commission document. Whether it's Canada, it's called a TRA, TRS, and in the United States, it's called commission document, CDAs. Internally, we just call it a commission document. It's basically instructions on how much to pay and who, and how do you pay them. That's all it is. So we said, okay, let's just have a goal of producing all these, having them verify everything and producing the commission document. That's it. So that was goal number one. And then say, okay, let's build a modern application. So it should be similar to like, buying a product on Shopify. So when you create a transaction in Reason, which is the name of our platform, right? So you should feel like you're just buying a complex product on Shopify, right? So what's your commission? What are you going to make? Do you have any rebates? So we have like English language, but there is no place in reason where you can just type in $500 for my TC. That doesn't scale. That will never scale because then someone has to read that and plug it in somewhere, which is what was happening in SkySlope, right? So it was just, I think intuition driven is the answer. Like it was more intuition driven and we were willing to take bets. I think larger companies have a different problem, which we'll have sooner or later, is if you already have an existing agent base of like say 40,000 agents and you want to roll out your own transaction platform, you will be stressed, right? Because you'll be like, oh my God, I'm gonna roll this out. And if something doesn't work, 40,000 agents are gonna be complaining, right? And I think that has happened to a few people, and they roll out, and then they roll back saying, screw this. The other thing is there's a transitionary executive base, is what I call it, like career executives. Like there are career politicians and then there are career executives, right? Like career executives are like, they come in, they take a job for a couple of years, 3 years, they set the strategy, they set the course for the company, they quit, they go get the next job. The problem is what happened to the career, to the strategy that you set up and the course you set up. It's not finished. So the next person comes in. Obviously, there's some messiness, like what we do, there's so much mess, right? So obviously there's some mess. The next person comes in and goes, screw this mess, I'm going to create my own mess. So they abandon this whole thing and they start a new thing, right? So that's why most corporations, real estate or not real estate, are not able to innovate because there is like, people don't stay long, right? Like they don't finish what they started.
Yeah.
So that's another thing.
Yeah. So I got three things I want to make sure we get to. The first one is Proteams, because I have a basic understanding of what it is, Pritesh, but I would love for you to explain, because I know it's a complex system. I guess the first question is why? Why build it, and then what is it?
So Proteams came out of a call Sharon and I were on, and for years we have resisted the idea of managing. We've always wanted to automate our side, but we didn't want to manage the team side. Like if you're running a team and you have your own caps and you have your own fees and stuff like that, we didn't want to like manage that because it's technically not brokerage business. And if we added bugs in that, or like every system has bugs, and if you do the math wrong, then you all of a sudden you're solving problems that you don't need to solve. So we were reluctant to it. At some point, Sharon came along and we were just, shooting the shit, and like we're talking about like, oh, the ability to, so you have Side in the industry, right? Side is basically white label software, and how independents were going to Side. And Sharon was like, oh, there are so many Side teams coming over to Real, but I wish like, they will have to like manage all this team dynamics. I'm like, well, in theory we've never done this, but in theory we should be able to go to any independent and say, hey, nothing changed. Like, what is the biggest thing that happens when they're moving brokerages? The agents have anxiety. Oh, change.
You said that to Sharon. You said, in theory, this is possible.
Yeah, in theory, it's possible, right? Like the fun thing is like, what happened? So we started talking about like, what's the mindset? What's the biggest thing that goes wrong, right? The biggest thing that could go wrong or drives anxiety is when the broker owner or the local office owner or the indie owner goes to their agents and say, we're going to move brokerages. And here are a new set of fees. Forget our old system. I got to explain to you all these fees, right? Our split is 70-30, but this brokerage is, 85-15. I'm going to have an Excel sheet and I'm going to keep track of this thing. Nothing changes for you, but you're going to use the app. There's all this mechanics that get in. And it's just friction. Any kind of anxiety is just more friction. So what we were talking about is like, it would be fun if we can go to any brokerage and say, you can come to Real and you can tell your agents nothing changes. Like everything stays the same. You just download this app. That was the goal, and that is still the goal with Proteams. Now, what made it more fun was private label. So now with Sharon running the private label side of things, right? We are able to go to independents and say, hey, you can keep your brand if they qualify. And there's a whole qualification thing to this. But if they qualify, they can keep the brand. Everything stays the same. You move to real and you just enjoy the economics. Because we are able to bring our efficiency down to their local offices. So all your, headcounts around cap management or processing payments and all of that disappears, right? I would love to at some point like interview a few people to figure out their final economics on this. It's still new. It's only 6 months since we launched. But it's such an easy value proposition at that point. You go in to people who qualify, you say everything stays the same, just move to real. You're going to make more money.
Yeah.
So that was like the idea, and it also justified the need to build it, right? And we honestly happen to be in a place where we could build it because we built everything else. It just sits on top of it. So anybody else who needs to build this would have to build everything we built before you build Proteams, right?
Well, and that kind of leads me to fintech, and it's interesting. I've done, gosh, I don't know, a couple hundred calls in the past 4 months and 4.5 months. Nobody really knows what fintech is. I didn't know what fintech was. So I'd love to find out from you, whose brainchild was that? Where did it come from? Like where was the idea spawned for financial technology? And if we could just unpack it a little bit, because it's one of the things that I know you're excited about. Most of our agents are really excited about. So, what spawned the idea, and then if you could just talk a little bit about, what you're excited about for the future of financial technology.
Yeah. So specifically, like the portion that we are doing is embedded finance. So like what embedded finance is, that is creating financial opportunity or embedding finance in a business that has nothing to do with finance, but you tap into an underlying financial ecosystem. So let me explain what that means. Hypothetically, if a brokerage is doing $1 billion of GCI, right? Or if hypothetically, if Real did $1 billion of GCI this year, right? We would keep around 8 to 9% of it by the time all the caps and everything is done. Everything else goes to the agents. So you're seeing like close to $900 million just flowing through our pipes, assuming it's all single check. Flowing through our pipes, you're just exiting, coming to Real, exiting, coming to Real, exiting. That's a lot of money to just exit, right? And where is it exiting? It's going to like the nearest personal checking account. That's where it's exiting with low interest rates. So the opportunity is in that fuel, right? The other thing, we found ourselves in a situation where we had built all of this stuff, all the technology that intimately understood every piece of core data, like how many referrals do you get? How many deals do you get? How consistently do you do deals? How long have you been with Real? How much have you contributed to stock? How much do you make in Refshare? Every little piece of data is tracked inside of Reason. So we have data that most banks, nobody has, right? About you, about your business. If you're a full-time real estate agent, we have more access to your data than even you understand. Like because you pay taxes and whatnot, but like you have to really zoom out and analyze your data to understand like what your data actually means. When people say, give me data, what they mean is give me insight. I could give you an Excel sheet, it's pointless. But you want that insight, that nugget, like what's the bottom line? What can I learn from this thing, right? So we knew all of this stuff. And we also know that we want to build something bigger than a brokerage. We want to build what the future of real estate should be, not what it is today. So how do you make an agent's life consistent or predictable is something we've always thought about. And there are many industries where independent consultants or contractors have gotten to a point where they can have a simulated paycheck in many ways, right? So we were thinking about this. So we knew that we had enough data to underwrite an agent. And that was one idea, which was the credit card idea or the charge card idea. And again, like this was 18, 20 months ago, right? And Tamir and I started messing around with it. So I think I could be wrong on this, but like, I think the credit was something that I pitched and the debit was something that he added later on. Like it was his idea to like say, okay, let's just also do debit. And initially it was the credit that was driving it, and then the debit, and then I think together it kind of makes a lot more sense. And then Real Wallet came out, right, which was a combination of credit and debit plus other things. But the Real Wallet is like, the concept is much bigger for us, but today it's credit debit or charge card specifically.
So, okay. So, and just to be clear, the point system is, because I love your analogy of, $900 million flowing through the pipes, and that money is ending up in checking accounts. Why can't we create and I think Tamir said this, I heard him say this, is that ultimately the vision is to be the bank. Is that accurate?
Well, this is where it goes into speculative territory, right? But like, let's just say, like, where can this idea go, right? We haven't researched enough on the regulatory side on what we can and cannot do. However, we know that there is money flowing through these pipes, and we know that we will launch let's just say, what are we going to launch in the next 2 months? Let's do that first, or next couple of months. And then once that's done, what does it real look like, right? So in the next few months, we will have an ability for every agent in the United States to have a debit account, a high interest checking account that comes with a debit card, right? And a large portion of our agents will qualify for some kind of credit, and that underwriting model kind of runs on its own. Literally, the tenure is part of the model, right? How long you've been with Real, because if you've just joined last month, then we just don't have enough data to underwrite you on anything, right? So assuming we have underwriting on a lot of people, there's a credit option that's available, right? So not only will you have a high interest checking account, but you will get paid instantly. And I think that will be the magical moment. And I don't think people are still like realizing how magical it will be. But today people are like, oh, it's taking me 24 hours or 48 hours to get paid. It will be like seconds to get paid, because these banks are in the same ledger. It's just different accounts on the same ledger. So you're not actually transferring, because the underlying bank that we use, we will also have an operating account there that has enough money to pay daily commissions out. So when our team settles and we're waiting for this transfer to like go through from our main corporate bank account to a community bank account somewhere, that takes time. Like, the reason some people get paid in 72 hours, some people in 48, and some people in 24, it depends on which network you're on. So if you're in like some community bank, it's just going to take longer, right? All of that disappears. Of course, we don't want to hold your money. So you'll have like a button that says auto debit or something, and we'll just send it back to you, but you will get paid instantly. So you can use your debit card immediately, right? So your money is available. Not only that, the whole 2 days in advance makes no sense. If we know your deal is coming, your charge card is already loaded with money, so you can just spend it ahead of time. You don't have to actually wait for the deal to close, especially when it's like in the last 5 days closing lane. If we did like the charge card first month free, there's no reason for you to just not use a charge card. Like, then all of a sudden, like, when is my money getting paid to me is irrelevant.
Yeah.
Whether it's like seconds, or even if it's 72 hours or 5 days, it's irrelevant, because the money's already available to you and you're not paying interest in the first month. So you just swipe it. Right. So we'll see how this plays out, but that's like what we are going to have, right? In a few months. And then our goal is going to be, okay, let's get adoption. Right, get everybody to get on it. And then we'll see how it works. We have hopes that this is like, a truly revolutionary way of thinking about it in this industry. Others have done it in other industries. Like, a traditional example for this, and this goes back to the question you were asking me, like a model, right? This is new in real estate possibly, but not in the world. Like a POS system, like Clover or something, where you go to a merchant and you swipe a card, and they have like these fancy little devices you tap or whatever. They have access to. They are exactly in the same position as we are. Money is flowing through the pipes. but they can't keep it. They participate in the merchant fees, but that's it. They can't keep the money. But they have access to all this data, so they know how much business you do. They can underwrite your business better than anybody else, right? So they are doing similar stuff. They're like extending you credit lines, they're extending you better business accounts. Uber has the same thing. I don't know if Uber still does it, but Uber used to loan you money to buy cars. Same thing, right? So this is not like that innovative, but it's probably innovative in this industry, right? Because nobody has the infrastructure to like build all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun, so interesting. So, can we speculate just a little bit for a minute, and I want to end around with the consumer app before we wrap up. But can we speculate just a little bit on you were sharing with us in theory that in the future there could be an opportunity for if you qualify, right? If you push enough assets through the brokerage, then in theory, a notification would appear on your within your app on your phone, and it would say, Clayton, there's a $50,000 capital need within the real community. This person has already been, underwritten. Would you like to participate at 9%? You click accept, and then in theory, there's a possibility for a platform where we are able to participate in lending because of this technology.
Right. So I think this is where it starts getting exciting. This is like a traditional use case of a crowdfunding. Like again, this is not a new idea. That there are so many crowdfunding platforms out there that do exactly this. Like, oh, I have a small business, I need $10,000. I have a small business, I need $5,000, and then a bunch of people will give you $10 or $100 each, and your business gets funded. They're all taking very little risk and getting paid interest on it. Everybody's kind of winning on this. And the risk is that some one person loses $100, right? Which is, probably not a lot for that person to lose if they're willing to lend on a crowdfunding platform. So if all the agents have, by the way, these debit accounts that the agents have, it's their accounts legally, right? Like FDIC insured, legally their account. We don't have access to those accounts. So, but we know the balances of these accounts, right? So in theory, if someone wanted to borrow $100, we could send 100 push notifications saying, do you want to lend $1 to Clayton at like an extra interest rate? And that's where new revenue is generated. Of course, some of the revenue goes to Clayton, who's the lenders, and some goes to Real for processing, right? So again, everybody's winning here, because if Clayton had to borrow from Chase, they'll be borrowing at 18% or more, right? So everybody's kind of winning from this microeconomy that's created in this, but I think the complication is to figure out the regulatory environment. We're a public company, nothing can just be floated around. So the complication is to figure all these little pieces out over time. But we have time, right? Like we're building infrastructure. It's like one Lego block at a time. But we have all these pieces, and like now it looks a lot because we've spent 3.5 years building all of this stuff. And I think once the wallet launches, there are many segues or ways this can go. Another speculation would be, we can help you manage your taxes better. That's easy, right? Like a virtual account to like on every deal, some money gets saved for your taxes so that at the end of the year, you have money to pay your taxes. That's an easy win. Another speculation would be to help you manage your retirement, right? That kind of stuff. So we really want to be in a place where Real will build technology that will help the agent build wealth, not an income stream, like true wealth, right? Like, of course, not everybody's going to get to that point, but if you're willing and if you're like planning this thing, it's possible. So it's very possible that, that we can help you manage a retirement account, stuff like that, right? So that gets me excited as well. But again, it's baby steps. Like step number one is to just get the wallet out, and then we start learning from it and go from there.
Yeah, really exciting. So can we kind of wrap up with the consumer app and what is it and what are you most excited about for the future of the consumer app?
Yeah, so we literally have a podcast that talks about the super app. And we kind of launched it as a joke because it also helps us. It's therapeutic for us to like kind of just talk about day-to-day problems. Like most of those things on our episodes are literally problems that we're facing on a day-to-day basis. We just talk about it out loud. But that's what it takes to build a super app. So with on the consumer side, like, there are too many dead bodies in this graveyard, is how I say it all the time. There are many people who've tried and failed. Many, many people who've tried and failed. So, we internally started talking about like what is it that is going to make this app special? And a better property search interface is not it.
Mm.
A um anything better by 1% or 2% or 5% is not it. It needs to be like game changing, revolutionary. At the beginning of our talk, we were talking about like, how um, in our opinion, like if you have an app that's branded for you and you send it to your buyer, I don't know how many buyers like, oh yeah, I want to like send a property to Clayton. I'm gonna like open his app, forget Zillow, find the property on that, and then like send it to Clayton. Like, I don't know how many buyers do this. Like I have a feeling not many. So we don't want to build an app that's going to do that and like be another company that launches something that nobody uses. Right. So what is it that's going to be meaningfully different? Um, we know one thing is that we want to build a real estate experience. So which means that you come to Real to buy a home. And as part of buying a home, you're working with an agent, you're working with mortgage, you're working with title, but you're not like spelling it out. It's an experience. So like time to get your mortgage, here are some rates, do you, it's all optional, but like it's part of the experience. Um, Closing process, like the title companies, nobody knows what like, title documents are. Like most people don't understand any of this stuff. So dumbing it down to like human language, like explaining what an easement is or like stuff like that, like creating an experience where the buyer feels like they're handheld all the way and the agent is still in the center of everything. And the app might be branded for the agent so that they can see the agent all the time, they can talk to the agent all the time, but like is the reason to go to this app. And the reason isn't let me go search for a property. The reason isn't let me go get a mortgage. The reason is like, hey, anything, real estate, you open that app. So front and center is probably going to be Leo with like AI stuff in the front so that people can come to the app and ask meaningful things. Right. And everything else is kind of going to sprawl out of that. So we're going to start, we already launched the first portion of the app, which was the mortgage piece. And we have like, more active mortgages right now, like refis and new loans. And now we're like backing out and creating the rest of the experience.
Mm.
Right. But the financial goal for Real is to have ancillary services. That's a no-brainer. Right. And if we are super successful, if we are able to build something super meaningful, it will generate leads. But I think that's a long shot, right? Like I think like the medium term definition of success would be the sale of ancillary services and increasing happiness for agents, right? Like in a world where everything is being challenged, in a world where buyer agency is under pressure, creating an app that creates incredible value with your face on it is going to mean something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No question. So Pritesh, this, first of all, thank you. This was a big chunk of your time today, and I truly appreciate it. And when I say thank you, I mean that. Like I've been in this business for 19 years this year, and I've been with this company for just over 4 months, and the experience it's been different in a very good way. And it's because of people like you and your team and all the hundred people around the world that are working on this technology, and obviously the other people in leadership that are pouring in and are working tirelessly. I know I don't know how hard you're working, but I know how hard you're working. So just thank you. Thanks for pushing so hard and creating something really unique and special that all of us get to take advantage of. And again, thank you for your time. And we just appreciate all that you do.
Oh, thank you, man. This is great.